Just to build on the question about the reliever market, can you kind of explain a little bit more about what high asking prices, like what does that actually look like for you? And then how important was it to keep a hold of some of those top prospects?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that come to mind with that question, Evan.
Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of the Days of Roar podcast. I'm Evan Petzold, the Tigers beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, and the 2025 MLB trade deadline is in the books. The Tigers have a 64-46 record, and they're riding a 4-game winning streak, but they did not play Thursday, July 31st. 6 p.m. was the trade deadline, and a lot happened around the league. The Padres traded for reliever Mason Miller and starter J.P. Sears from the Athletics, giving up 4 prospects, including MLB's number 3 prospect, Leo DeVries, in the top 100. The Phillies traded for reliever Johan Duran from the Twins for 2 prospects, both in the top 100, Eduardo Tate and Mick Abel. Now, those were the only top 100 prospects traded at the trade deadline. So everyone else I'm about to mention was traded for prospects who were not on MLB Pipeline's top 100 list. The Mariners traded for third baseman Eugenio Suarez from the Diamondbacks for 3 prospects. The Mariners also traded for first baseman Josh Naylor from the Diamondbacks for 2 prospects. The Mets traded for reliever Ryan Helsley from the Cardinals for 3 prospects. The Yankees traded for reliever David Bednar from the Pirates for 3 prospects. The Yankees also traded for reliever Camilo Doval from the Giants for 4 prospects. And the Yankees also traded for reliever Jake Bird from the Rockies for 2 prospects. The Blue Jays traded for starter Shane Bieber from the Guardians for 1 prospect. The Blue Jays also traded for reliever Sir Anthony Dominguez from the Orioles for 1 prospect. The Mets traded for outfielder Cedric Mullins from the Orioles for 3 prospects. The Rays traded for reliever Griffin Jax from the Twins for pitcher Taj Bradley. The Rays also acquired starter Adrian Hauser from the White Sox for an infielder and 2 prospects. The Rangers traded for starter Merrill Kelly from the Diamondbacks for 3 prospects. The Rangers also traded for reliever Phil Maton from the Cardinals for 2 prospects. And the Astros traded for shortstop Carlos Correa, an old friend of theirs, from the Twins. Those were some of the big trades from around the league. The Tigers were interested in names like Ryan Helsley and David Bednar on the reliever market, but Helsley went to the Mets and Bednar went to the Yankees. The Tigers also had some interest in Eugenio Suarez on the position player market, though they weren't interested in Ryan McMahon or T. Brian Hayes, 2 fellow third basemen. But Suarez went to the Mariners. Again, none of those players, Ryan Helsley, David Bednar, or Eugenio Suarez, were traded for top 100 prospects, just to be clear on that. So the Tigers, presumably, would not have needed to give up one of their top 100 prospects, Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, Bryce Rayner, Josue Briseño, Thyron Lorenzo, to land one of those 3 big names, Ryan Helsley, David Bednar, Eugenio Suarez. The only players that required top 100 prospects, Padres reliever Mason Miller, who was under team control through the 2029 season, and Phillies reliever Johan Duran, who is under team control through the 2027 season. One rival executive told me the Tigers, quote, didn't want to give up any prospect value, end quote, at the 2025 trade deadline. As for what the Tigers did, the Tigers acquired 8 players at the trade deadline. Starter Charlie Morton from the Orioles, starter Chris Paddock from the Twins, reliever Kyle Finnegan from the Nationals, reliever Rafael Montero from the Braves, reliever Paul Sewald from the Guardians, reliever Cody Hoyer from the Rangers, reliever Randy Dobnak from the Twins, and outfielder Joseph Quinones from the Phillies. Additionally, 7 players exited the Tigers organization. Number 14 prospect Enrique Jimenez, a switch hitting catcher to the Twins in the Chris Paddock trade. Number 15 prospect Josh Randall, a right-handed starter, and fellow right-hander RJ Sales to the Nationals in the Kyle Finnegan trade. Pitching prospect Micah Ashman, a left-handed reliever to the Orioles in the Charlie Morton trade. Infield prospect Jim Jarvis to the Braves in the Rafael Montero trade. In the Paul Sewald trade, the Tigers are sending a player to be named later or cash considerations. Tigers also sent cash considerations to the Rangers in the Cody Hoyer trade, with Hoyer reporting to AAA Toledo, along with Randy Dobnak also reporting to AAA Toledo. He was in the Chris Paddock trade. The Tigers also traded Matt Manning, a right-hander, to the Phillies in the Joseph Quinones trade, but Quinones is an 18-year-old outfielder in the Dominican Summer League. Finally, the Tigers traded left-hander Dietrich Enns to the Orioles for cash considerations. Both Manning and Enns were designated for assignment by the Tigers in the hours leading up to the trade deadline. So with the Phillies trading for Manning and the Orioles trading for Enns, those teams essentially just skipped the waiver process. Tigers also designated for assignment right-handed reliever Tyler Owens, who is recovering from a right hip injury. If Owens does not get claimed off waivers, he will stay in the organization. So in total, the Tigers only traded 2 of their top 30 prospects according to MLB Pipeline: catcher Enrique Jimenez, the number 14 prospect, and right-hander Josh Randall, the number 15 prospect. We have a lot to discuss, but first, let's hear from Tigers President of Baseball Operations Scott Harris on several topics. He spoke with reporters for about 30 minutes, beginning at 6:45 p.m. on Thursday, just 45 minutes after the trade deadline, and it's important that our listeners hear directly from him. Here's Scott Harris on the reliever market and his trades for Kyle Finnegan, Paul Sewald, and Rafael Montero.
I think going into the market, my evaluation of the market was that it was pretty thin. I think a lot of executives sort of shared that evaluation of the market. There was some feeling that, some of the high-end relievers may not move. That seemed to come to pass. There was some feeling that, we may not have access to some of the higher end relievers that happen to be in our division, and either may not move or may move somewhere else. Also, some of the prices around the game were really high for short-term rental relievers. It's a really valuable position, and clearly the game values that. But I think as we started to navigate the market and hear that the asking prices for some of these guys, we felt like it was a better approach for us to attack it in volume with some guys that we like, some guys that, are doing some things under the hood that we really value and that are predictive of, future performance. And we really needed to strengthen our pen in a number of ways. So we added a number of relievers that will help us this weekend in Philadelphia. We're going to move Troy Melton to the bullpen. He's going to help us immediately. We added a dynamic swing and miss option that's going to come online in September in Paul Sewald. And then we added some depth behind those guys that I think is going to give us the amount of pitching that we're going to need to endure the stretch run and give us a bunch of different weapons to attack lineups a bunch of different ways in August, September, and then most importantly, October if we get there.
Here's Scott Harris on when the Tigers didn't trade for more big names, such as relievers David Bednar and Ryan Helsley, third baseman Eugenio Suarez, or starter Merrill Kelly.
Oftentimes the flashes move generates a lot of excitement at the time and fails to impact the team as much as you would have hoped, as much as you would have liked. I'm not saying that's all the time. There are anecdotes of, certain moves changing the trajectory of an organization. I'm just arguing that that's the exception, not the rule. So there will be times in my tenure where we do chase the Flash's name and we go land the Flash's name, and it does really help us. But only if it fits our needs and it fits what we think we need to address in the second half leading up to October. So, I think the evidence doesn't necessarily match the perception in terms of, the most talked about name being the actual best player for the stretch run and deep into October. So that was one thing that was top of mind for us. I think, when it came to the actual prices, I will say that a lot of the moves we passed on felt like moves that were going to haunt us for many years to come. We have what we think is one of the best, if not the best, farm system in all of baseball. And that means we got really good players coming. We got really good players that are going to be fan favorites, that are going to be playing at Comerica Park for many years and helping us win a lot of games. And some of those guys are going to get there this year. And we felt like at this moment in time in this organization, giving up on young players to chase short-term fixes for this organization is not in the best interest of the Tigers, both in the short and long term. So we tried to attack it creatively.
Here's Scott Harris on why the Tigers didn't trade for any position players, specifically a right-handed hitter like Eugenio Suarez.
I think first and foremost, I saw a lot about adding a right-handed bat. I'm not really sure the body of work over the first half suggests that we needed necessarily a right-handed bat. I mean, we went through a rough patch a couple of weeks ago. I think this team's going to get stronger as a result of going through adversity. But prior to that rough patch, I think we were like second in all of baseball against left-handed pitching. We were absolutely mauling left-handed pitching. So I don't know where the idea of like specifically a right-handed bat came from.
Now I'm going to interject here. I don't think anyone is questioning whether or not the Tigers are successful against left-handed pitchers. I think the need for a right-handed bat comes from the fact that many of the top players on the Tigers roster are left-handed hitters. And against elite lefties, those players either sit on the bench against lefties, that's Colt Keith, Kerry Carpenter, Parker Meadows, or struggle against lefties. That's Riley Green. Okay, back to Scott.
I will say, consistent with what I said earlier about this market being a little bit thin, I think as we explored the market, the central question that we asked ourselves over and over again is the player available better than the player we have? Like, do we believe in the player available more than we believe in the player we have right now? Every decision and non-decision is a bet. If you decide to trade for a player, you're betting on that player. If you make a non-decision, which is a decision in and of itself, you're betting on the player you have. And so I think as we thought about it, we're betting on the player we have, and we're betting on the player that we would have had to give up to go acquire that player over acquiring that player. And I think these guys have earned it. We did what we did today because we believe in our offense. We believe in these young players. We believe that they're still getting into their prime years and they're going to continue to get better. I think it's the same belief that we had in this group last winter, and that we're being rewarded for that belief this year with a 9-game lead in the AL Central. So we're going to keep believing in the growth that we can create from within. We're going to keep believing in this group because we think if we have the right mix of really talented, high character guys who are in it for the right reasons, and they're getting better right before your eyes. So those were some of the thoughts that filtered into my head as we started exploring bats for the trade deadline.
And here's Scott Harris on the Tarik Skubal window. Remember, Tarik Skubal becomes a free agent after the 2026 season. And as of now, the Tigers are not expected to sign him to a contract extension. But Scott Harris dismissed the idea that the best chance at winning hinges on Skubal's current dominance. Here's what he said.
I think this idea of a window is an illusion. I think there's a lot of talent in this organization. There are a lot of players on this team who are in it for the right reasons, who are playing for each other, and they're playing for the city of Detroit. And they've done some special things. I think from All-Star break to All-Star break, we have the most wins in all of Major League Baseball. And Tarik Skubal is certainly leading the way, and he has been leading the way here, but there's a lot of really talented players, both in the big leagues right now and that are coming through this really talented system. So, I'm not looking at this as a window. It doesn't mean that I'm like shorting the present for the future by any means, but this whole idea of a window is not really filtering into my head because it's my job to get to the postseason every single year if I can. We're off to a good start. We got there last year. We have a 9-game lead in the AL Central right now, and we just got a whole lot better today. So we're going to keep chugging along. We're just keep winning as many games as we can and try to make good decisions to make sure that the city of Detroit can enjoy playoff baseball as many years as possible.
Everyone, that was Scott Harris discussing what the Tigers did and didn't do at the 2025 trade deadline. Let's hope he truly is the smartest guy in the room, because a lot of World Series contenders seem to get significantly better at the trade deadline, whereas the Tigers acted like they just don't want to blow their 9-game lead in the AL Central. But did they really improve their chances of winning the World Series? To me, Kyle Finnegan, Charlie Morton, Chris Paddock, Rafael Montero, Paul Sewald, those guys don't move the needle when it comes to trying to win the World Series for the first time since 1984. But they certainly help guarantee the Tigers will be stable enough to finish strong in the final 2 months and advance to the postseason for the second time in as many years. Now, hopefully the Tigers finished one of the top 2 teams in the American League, which means they would avoid a best-of-3 wildcard series in which Tarik Skubal, Jack Flaherty, and Casey Mize would be their 3 starting pitchers, likely against either the Eugenio Suarez-led Seattle Mariners or the Alex Bregman-led Boston Red Sox, and just advance directly to the best-of-5 ALDS. But to get that bye, you have to be one of the top 2 teams in the American League. Now, coming out of the trade deadline, as of Friday morning, the Tigers and the Blue Jays are tied atop the AL, with the Astros 1.5 games back and the Yankees 3.5 games back. So we'll see if what the Tigers added at the trade deadline helps them fend off the Astros and the Yankees down the stretch here, because you do want the Tigers to be one of the top 2 teams in the AL to avoid that best-of-3 wildcard series and advance directly to the best-of-5 ALDS. Anyway, we need to talk about the players the Tigers added at the trade deadline, and we really only need to touch on 5 names. Starter Charlie Morton, starter Chris Paddock, reliever Kyle Finnegan, reliever Rafael Montero, and reliever Paul Sewald. The other 3 additions are minor leaguers, with 2 in AAA Toledo and 1 in the Dominican Summer League. The biggest name is Kyle Finnegan, but let's start with Paul Sewald, a right-handed reliever acquired from the Guardians who is currently injured. The 35-year-old has a 4.70 ERA with 4 walks and 18 strikeouts in 15 1/3 innings in 18 games. He has been on the injured list for most of the season with a right shoulder strain from April 29th to July 5th, then again since July 15th, retroactive to July 12th. The Tigers expect Sewald to be healthy by early September, but after the Tigers transferred him to the 60-day injured list, he now is not eligible to pitch for the Tigers in the big leagues until September 10th at the very earliest. It's a small sample size, but Paul Sewald ranks above average in walk rate, strikeout rate, and whiff rate this season, though he had fewer strikeouts and fewer whiffs last season. The Tigers needed a reliever who generates swings and misses. Their bullpen ranks 29th among the 30 MLB teams with a 22.6% whiff rate. Paul Sewald, he fixes that issue. He only throws 90 miles an hour these days with that fastball, but his sweeper, that is his go-to pitch, and he misses a lot of bats with it. The only problem is none of that matters unless he gets healthy and stays healthy. For now, we know we will not see Paul Sewald in games for the Tigers until at least September 10th. Next, we have Kyle Finnegan. The Tigers missed out on Ryan Helsley, who went to the Mets. And before they missed out on David Bednar, who went to the Yankees, the Tigers pivoted by acquiring Kyle Finnegan, a 33-year-old right-handed reliever who has been the Nationals' full-time closer for the past 3 seasons. In 2025, Finnegan has a 4.38 ERA with 14 walks and 32 strikeouts across 39 innings in 40 games, with 20 saves in 26 opportunities. But he's below average in 3 really important categories: 24th percentile in whiff rate, 31st percentile in strikeout rate, and 41st percentile in walk rate. So he won't dominate hitters with strikeouts, but he offsets that by getting ground balls at an above average rate. In 2025, Finnegan is one of 13 relievers with 20 saves. Among that group, he ranks 12th in ERA, 12th in walks and hits per innings pitched, 8th in walks per 9 innings, and 12th in strikeouts per 9 innings. That's among 13 relievers with at least 20 saves in the 2025 season. As for what the Tigers do, I'm guessing Will Vest will remain the primary closer, and Finnegan will handle the 8th inning. Will Vest, you guys, has been really, really good for the Tigers and significantly better than Kyle Finnegan, but that's all for AJ Hinch to decide as the manager. For the starters, we have Charlie Morton. The Tigers got Morton from the Orioles at the buzzer. Trading for the 41-year-old, yes, he is 4 years older than Alex Cobb, in the final minutes before the trade deadline. By acquiring Morton, the Tigers pushed rookie Troy Melton to the bullpen for the final 2 months of the season and into the postseason. Now, Melton fits into the bullpen because the Tigers need to limit his innings to protect the health of his arm. He has already thrown nearly 90 innings, and he probably has a limit of 120 to 130 innings. So you have maybe 30 to 40 more innings to work with. Let's say it's 40 innings. That's about 7 starts, assuming between 5 and 6 innings per start. So maybe you get to the end of the season, but then you got nothing for the postseason. The Tigers are making that move now, so they'll definitely have Melton for the postseason. Another thing on this is the Tigers like the idea of using Melton out of the bullpen because his stuff, it's already really good. It's going to play up even more, and he would be a swing and miss weapon against right-handed hitters, which the Tigers really don't have outside of Will Vest. So Melton basically becomes the right-handed version of Brant Herter. That's how the Tigers are approaching Melton's move from the rotation to the bullpen. As for Charlie Morton, he has a 5.42 ERA with 48 walks and 101 strikeouts across 101 and 1/3 innings in 23 games, including 17 starts. He had a 7.68 ERA in his first 12 games, followed by a much improved 3.88 ERA over his last 11 starts, dating back to May 26th. His fastball averages 94 miles an hour. His curveball misses bats. He ranks above average in whiff rate, but below average in walk rate and slightly below average in strikeout rate. He's got a relationship with Tigers manager AJ Hinch. He pitched for him in 2017 and 2018 with the Astros, winning the World Series in 2017. Charlie Morton's been in the big leagues for 18 seasons, and this could be the final year of his MLB career. Another starter, Chris Paddack. This one's pretty sad. The Tigers acquired Paddack to fill a spot in the rotation after Reese Olson, you know what we think about Reese Olson here on Days of Roar, suffered a right shoulder strain, which will sideline him for the remainder of the regular season. The Tigers are leaving the door open for Olson to return in the postseason, but by the way everyone's talking about it, it seems like we won't see Reese Olson pitch again until 2026 spring training. I hope I'm wrong on that, but either way, we know we're not going to see Reese Olson again in the regular season, so he ends with a 3.15 ERA in 13 starts. For Chris Paddack, he's a 29-year-old right-hander. Already started for the Tigers. He allowed 1 run over 6 innings in a 7-2 win on Wednesday against the Diamondbacks. In 2025, he has a 4.77 ERA with 27 walks and 88 strikeouts over 117 innings in 22 starts. He has not thrown this many innings since 2019, which was his first season in the big leagues. He's been sidelined by a lot of injuries and issues to his throwing arm, including Tommy John surgery in both 2016 before his MLB debut, in 2022 after his MLB debut. So hopefully he is able to stay healthy. But again, he hasn't thrown this many innings since 2019 when he threw 140 innings. That was 6 years ago. But Paddack's going to eat innings. He's going to fill up the strike zone. He's going to hover between a 4.5 and a 5 ERA. That's just who he's been as a pitcher. We'll see if something changes now that he is with the Tigers. But I'll go off the track record for now. Limits walks, doesn't generate whiffs or strikeouts. It's basically it's Kiter Montero or Chris Paddack to replace Reese Olson. And the Tigers chose to trade for Chris Paddack while leaving Kiter Montero in AAA Toledo. And just to reset the Tigers rotation, Tigers have Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty, and Casey Mize as their top 3 starters, followed by Charlie Morton and Chris Paddack. The ERAs for those starters, Skubal has a 2.09 ERA in 21 starts. Then Mize at 3.43 in 18 starts. Flaherty at 4.51 in 21 starts, Paddack at 4.77 in 22 starts, and Morton at 5.42 in 23 games. So it's Skubal and a whole lot of question marks with 2 months remaining in the regular season. Last and definitely least, reliever Rafael Montero. I don't have a lot to say here. He's a 34-year-old right-handed reliever. He was good in 2022, but he's been one of the worst MLB relievers from 2023 to 2025. In 2025, Rafael Montero has a 5.40 ERA with 21 walks and 34 strikeouts across 38 1/3 innings in 39 games. His 13.9% walk rate is in the 2nd percentile, and his 23.5% strikeout rate is in the 58th percentile. He does miss some bats, so that's the upside here, but he doesn't know where the ball is going. He can't throw strikes. That leads to too many walks. If I had to guess, I guess he gets cut when Paul Sewald is activated from the injured list in September, but that's just my early guess. We'll have to see how all this plays out. But this is another project for the Tigers pitching department, and I'm not sure if they need more projects right now. I think they just need proven relievers. But on Rafael Montero, I'll leave you with this. An excerpt from what I wrote in Freep.com when I graded the Tigers trade. Here's the number 1 problem. From 2023 to 2025, Montero ranks 164th out of 174 qualified relievers with a 5.06 ERA. That's from 2023 to 2025. He is ahead of only Joey Wentz, Jalen Beeks, Jose Ruiz, Trevor Richard, Carlos Hernandez, Joe Mantiply, Nate Pearson, Scott Magoo, John Brebbia, and Tyler Kinley. The Tigers already tried and failed to fix Wentz, Hernandez, and Brebbia. Those are the 5 MLB players the Tigers traded for: Kyle Finnegan, Charlie Morton, Chris Paddack, Paul Sewald, and Rafael Montero. All 5 of those players are going to become free agents after the 2025 season. However, Paul Sewald has a $10 million mutual option with a $1 million buyout, which means if Sewald opts in, then the Tigers must decide whether to exercise the option and pay him $10 million for 2026 or decline that and pay the $1 million buyout. And one last time, here's Tigers President of Baseball Operations, Scott Harris, talking about the Tigers' conservative approach at the 2025 trade deadline.
It's sort of hard to paint everything with the same brush, but I totally understand your question, and I think it's a fair question. I think with the bigger names that we were interested in, I think they thoroughly convinced us that these would be trades that we would regret for many years, that they would be trades that would haunt us, that we would be trading players that have a chance to be really productive Tigers for many years, both as soon as the second half of this year and in future years. And so, I think the other thing that is pretty notable is if you look at some of the biggest names that were available at this deadline, a lot of those guys were thrown into trades at previous trade deadlines or previous winter meetings. And then they came back to burn those organizations, and then they became like the flashiest names at these trade deadlines. So, my job is to like approach these deadlines and try to make the best decision for the organization. Like, I understand everybody wants to go grab the flashiest name and not give up any good players. Like, that's not an option. Like, we can't do that. Like, if we're going to go grab one of those players, we're going to give up some really talented players, especially in this farm system, to go get those players. And I think that just wasn't in the best interest of our organization. I also will say, like, just off the top of my head, like, you don't get 7 shutout innings by Troy Melton in the big leagues if you throw him into a deal last deadline. You don't get like Dylan Dingler's performance on both sides of the ball behind the plate if you short his future after a really tough second half last year and you throw him into a deal at the winter meetings. Like, you don't get like Wenzel Perez's impact in our last series if he's a throw-in on a deal when he's younger in the minor leagues. So this comes with a real cost that is sometimes invisible at the deadline to kind of casual observers. Like, if you move some players that you really believe in, like, sometimes it makes you worse. Like, sometimes if you go grab the flashiest player, like, you have to trade away a better player to get that player. And so we were hyper conscious of that. We're not averse to doing those deals, but I think specifically when we lined up with deals with other teams, like the asks were some players that we think might actually be better than the players that we would be acquiring. They're obviously on different timelines, but it's really important that we continue to build through development. We continue to build through the growth that we can access from within. It's one of the reasons why we're here right now. It's one of the reasons why this organization is so healthy and we have a 9-game lead and a farm system that's winning a ton. So I got to balance that. That's the job. And if that subjects me to criticism, like, I totally understand it. I'm just never going to make moves to avoid criticism if they're not in the best interest of the organization. And I think in my tenure here, I've made some really unpopular moves in the draft, in free agency, via trade. And I think it's one of the reasons why we're here is that a lot of those non-moves, a lot of those non-decisions actually set us up better for the future than they would have in the press release that comes right after those deadlines. So I was hyper conscious of that. We'll see if I got it right. But that's what I was thinking about when we got deep into talks with some of those bigger names. Does that make sense?
All right, everyone, that's all we have for this bonus episode on the Days of Roar podcast. The Tigers begin a 3-game series with the Philadelphia Phillies on Friday, August 1st, and then they're back at Comerica Park. Thanks to our producer, Robin Chan, for putting in the extra work to edit and publish this episode. Check back for our regular hour-long episodes, which drop every Monday. And until then, go in peace.